Begin today the Gemara on Daf Mem Gimel, 6 lines from the top of the Yamut. So Gemara here continues, and this is actually going to focus on the last part of the Mishnah that we had in the beginning of the Perek. It said there in the Mishnah that the income of a girl that's working goes to the father when he's alive. When he passes away, any income that she already earned from before, even if she didn't collect the money from her employer, but the sons of the father, her brothers, will inherit her income. That's what it said in our Mishnah. So the Gemara is going to focus on this halacha of her income that goes to the father. What happens after the father passes away? So Rabbi Avina asked the question from Rav Sheshes as follows: Bas hanizainis mina achin. A girl that is getting fed by her brothers. Her father passed away, and now her brothers have an obligation to feed her. As Rashi brings here, that this is a t'nai. This is one of the conditions that's written inside the Kesubos. It's going to be a Mishnah later that the daughters, they get fed from the brothers, from her brothers, that is, after the father passes away. It's a condition in the Kesubos. So she's getting fed from the brothers. Now the question is, my siyadel lemi, her income, who gets this? Do I say, b'makam av kaimi, the brothers take the place of the father, ma hasam, my siyadel la'av. So just like the father gets her income, so too over here, the brothers, which are just taking the place of the father and are feeding her, so they also get her income. Or perhaps I should say, I cannot compare the brothers to the father. In the case of the father is feeding his daughter with his money. So therefore, in exchange, he gets her income. However, over here when it comes to the brothers, lav miditu misana, they are not feeding her with their own money. They're feeding her with the money that they inherited from the father. But any money that they earn on their own, they don't feed her with that money. So therefore they do not get in return any of her income. So that's the question here. The income of a girl after the father passes away, does she get to keep it, or does it go to the brothers that are feeding her? Amalei, sort of Sheshes.
What's the difference in the money?
What's the difference?
It's a big difference.
It's the same money.
No,
what do you mean
it's
the
a big
same
difference.
money? What's the same what?
The money that was from the father is also by the Yershim.
Yeah.
So
It's
But
separated.
now it's owned by them.
It's two
Now,
different accounts.
just a moment. But now it's owned by them. Now it's owned by the brothers, and therefore they don't have an obligation to.
that wasn't part of the Kesubos.
No. But the Maisiyah there doesn't say anything in the Kesubos. It says that they have an obligation to feed her, but what happens to her income? That's the question. Do they get it or not?
The older brother could have an obligation to do this and pass it on to his sister.
Okay, so let's see the continuation of the Gemara. Amalei, so Rav Sheshes answered and said, there's a pretty clear Mishnah about this. Tinisua, we learned this. The exact same question you're asking. It says regarding the Almana, the widow. Almana nizainis menichsi yisayim. So this is another condition that it's written into the Kesubos as well, that an almana after her husband passes away, she gets fed by the yisaimim, her children, or maybe not even necessarily her children, it could be her husband's children. So they inherit her husband, but now they have to feed the almana. And then the Mishnah there says, her income goes to them. So we should say the same thing regarding the daughters as well, that the daughters get fed by the brothers, and the income goes to the brothers. Says the Gemara, not necessarily. You can't compare these two. Midami. How could you compare the halacha regarding the daughter that we asked, and regarding the halacha of the almana, that her income goes to the yisayim? Almanasai, when it comes to a person's widow, he's not necessarily interested that his wife should be working and make an extra income and keep the money for herself. The condition that he made in the Kesubos is that she should be able to live happily ever after, to have money, to have food to eat, to feed herself, and so on. That, yeah, but not necessarily that she should be keeping all of her income. So we understand that the husband is interested that her income should go to the Yisayimim. They're the ones that have a need in this income. But on the other hand, though, bitoi, when it comes to a person's daughter, nichale barvacha, a person is very happy and interested that his daughter should be able to keep her income. She still has to get married, she has a future, she has things that she has to use the money for. So the father would be very happy for her to keep her income. So we can't compare the daughter to the almana. So in essence, what we can see over here is the basis of the Gemara's question regarding his daughter, whether the income goes to the brothers or she gets to keep it, is this point over here. Does the father want her to be able to keep her income for herself, for her future? Or do we say, no, since the brothers are feeding her, so it's only fair that she should give the income to the brothers? That's the question there.
the brothers before they get married or after?
It doesn't make a difference.
Doesn't make-
Regarding
After they get married, they go away. Then she needs the same reason as every daughter needs to feed themselves. The almana needs to feed themselves also after the kids go away.
No, even after they get married, it doesn't make a difference. They still have an obligation to feed the almana. Whether they're married or not, they have the same obligation. Okay, so the Gemara here is basically pointing out that a person is more concerned about his daughter having extra money of her income, more even than his wife, the widow. But the Gemara says, "Lememre, is this true? Shall we say the bitoy adifale malmanasa, that for a person, his daughter takes precedent, is stronger than his wife, the widow." But for Rab Yaisi said in the name of Rab Yaisi that we see that the reverse is true. That asu almana eitzel abas, that Chachamim instituted, that we consider the almana when there is also a daughter. So you have two over here that have to be taken care of. You have the almana that has to be taken care of, just to be fed, and you have the daughter that has to be fed. So they consider the almana in the place when there's also a daughter, kibas eitzel achin, the same way we treat a daughter when there's brothers, b'nechasen mu'atin, when there's not enough money. What does this mean? There's two scenarios when there's a Yerusha. There's a case when there's Nechasim Merubin. Nechasim Merubin means there's plenty of money to feed this girl or the girls, and therefore the sons are the one that inherit the possessions of the father. That's the halacha. Yerusha goes to the sons. What's if there's Nechasim Mu'atin? Nechasim Mu'atin means you don't have plenty of money here. There's not enough money to feed this girl for even 12 months. And therefore in such a case, the sons inherit nothing. All the money that's here goes to the daughters, and the brothers don't get any inheritance. So the Gemara now explains how this applies regarding the daughter and the almana and the widow. So, in the words of the Gemara, ma bas eitzelachem. Just like when it comes to a daughter and there's also brothers here. And again, there's not enough money for the brothers to inherit, and therefore the halach is habas nizainis. The daughter is the one that gets all this money. She's the one that gets fed. Va'achin yishulu ala psachim. And then the brothers are going to have to go to doors and knock on doors and go and collect money for themselves. So af almana etzel abas, similar when it comes to an almana and it comes to a daughter, who's the one that gets the money? If there's not enough for both of them, who gets the money here? Almana nizainis. We're going to give the money to feed the almana. Va'abas tishalal apsachim. And the daughter, she's going to have to go around collecting money for herself. So what do we see over here regarding the conditions that are made in a kesubah? You have a condition that you have to feed the almana. You have a condition you have to feed the daughter. Who's the one that the husband is more concerned about?
Almana.
He's more concerned about the almana. So how can we say before that when it comes to the income, that we say that a father wants more that his daughter should get the income and not the almana? Here we see the exact reverse. So the Gemara answers, it depends for what. When it comes to the fact that if you're not going to be fed, you're going to be embarrassed by the fact that you're going to have to go around collecting money for yourself. For this, a father is more concerned about his wife's embarrassment, and therefore, if there's not enough money for the daughter and for the almana, she's an older woman, and he's more concerned about it. He doesn't want her to have to go around collecting money. But le'inyan harvacha, regarding the extra income that she has with her, that she works for herself, bite adifale. For this, a father is more interested that his daughter should keep her income for herself, for what she needs it for the future, and not necessarily for the almana. For the almana, he's not so concerned about her having extra income as long as the brothers, as the Yisayim, will feed her of what she needs. She says, so the father's happy with that. Masav Rav Yosef, now Rav Yosef asks on what we just said over here. So according on this whole discussion there regarding the daughter, the almana, if we're discussing actually mainly the daughter. Does the daughter keep her income, or does the income go to the brothers? So Rav Yosef asks, we can learn this from the Mishnah, the beginning of the Perek. So what did it say? A girl's income, or if she finds a mitziyah, so even if she didn't yet collect this money that she's owed for this work, if the father passes away, so the brothers inherit her income that she worked from before when the father was still alive. So what do you understand from this? The reason why the brothers get this income of hers, the b'chaye because she already earned this when the father was alive, so it already belongs to the father. So if the father passes away, the brothers inherit this. But it seems from our Mishnah that if there's any income after the father passed away, la'atzma, so then that income she gets to keep for herself. So my love, don't you think the Mishnah is speaking about a regular case, which is b'ni zaynis, that she's getting fed by the brothers, like the condition of every ksuba is, and nevertheless, what is the Mishnah saying? That her income she keeps for herself. The only time the income goes to the brothers is because she earned it already before the father passed away. Answers the Gemara, not necessarily. Loi b'she'eina nizaynis. Maybe our Mishnah is speaking about a case that she's not getting fed by the brothers. But the Gemara asks, how could you say this? If she's not getting fed by the brothers, Maila Memra. So then what's the Chiddush here in our Mishnah? What's the Mishnah saying over here? That her income goes to the father, and then if she did not earn it when the father was alive, then it goes to herself. There's no Chiddush in the Mishnah in both of these cases. As Rashi explains, obviously, if the brothers are not feeding her, why would I think that she has to give her income to them? Obviously, she doesn't have to give the income to them. And also regarding the halacha of this, that if she earned this already in the time when the father is alive, that the brothers get this, for sure the brothers should get this. Why not? We already know this halacha from another place, that her income goes to the father. And therefore the fact that over here, if she earned it in the time when the father was alive, the brothers would inherit this, obviously. The only time that brothers don't inherit something that comes from their sister to the father is like we learned before regarding knas. Knas, the father doesn't inherit the children don't inherit that. But over here, it's pshita, it's obvious. So what's the chiddush over here in the Mishnah? If the case is that she's not getting fed from the brothers, so the Gemara adds to this question. Now, even according to the opinion, this concept the Gemara brings up over here is a machlokes. And here the Gemara brings up regarding an Eved Kanani. An Eved Kanani, there's a similar arrangement with every Eved Kanani. What happens by every Eved Kanani? He works for his master, and his master feeds him, right? So there's one opinion that says, Yochel Rav Loimel Eved. A master could come and say to his Eved Kanani, I say, Imi, you still have to work for me, but ve'eni zonach. I'm not going to feed you. You're going to have to go figure out how to find yourself food, but you still have to work with me. And master has the right, he owns his Eved, and he has the right to say this to his Eved Kanani. But Hanamili, when is that true, Be'eved Kanani? When it comes to an Eved Kanani, so you could treat him this way. It's not the right thing to do, but if you say so, he can't force you to feed him. Why? The Torah does not write regarding an Eved Kanani this word imach, which means you have to treat him properly like you would treat yourself. But regarding Eved Ivri, where the Torah writes the word imach. So the word imach means he has to be like the way you treat yourself. So you can't do such a thing. You can't tell the Eved that you work for me, but I'm not going to feed you. So over here as well, kol sheken bitay. So most definitely when it comes to a person's daughter, so why should she have to give her income to the brothers if the brothers say, we're not feeding you? They're not going to feed her, but she still has to give them the income. So what is she going to eat from? What do we expect? So therefore, if I have it ivri, we don't say such a thing. For sure, we shouldn't say such a thing by a Jewish girl, by this daughter here. So what's the chiddush of our Mishnah? It's very difficult to say that our Mishnah is saying that the brothers don't get her income in a case where they're not even feeding her. Obviously, if they're not feeding her, she needs her income to feed herself. So the Gemara answers, well, not necessarily. Rabbi Bar Ula says, yeah, we could really be saying that the Mishnah is speaking about a case that the brothers are not feeding her. And still there's a chiddush that she could keep her income. What it's speaking about over here is that there's extra income she has. Of course, the basic income she needs to feed herself. We understand that she doesn't have to give her brothers. If they're not feeding her, she needs her basic income to feed herself. If an Eved keeps his income in that case, for sure a daughter could. But if there's hadafa, if there's extras, I would have thought that maybe that she does have to give to her brothers. So this is what our Mishnah is saying. Even extra income's more than what she needs to feed herself, she still doesn't have to give to her brothers. So therefore, from our Mishnah, there would be no raya to what we are discussing here. Our discussion is regarding a case where the brothers are feeding her. And the question is whether she gets to keep her income or not. Our Mishnah can be speaking about a case where the brothers are not feeding her. And the Mishnah is teaching me that she doesn't give any income to her brothers, not even extra income, more than what she needs for her food. So the Gemara says, Omar Rava, Gavra Rabba ke Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef was the one that brought up our Mishnah as a raya to our discussion, when the brothers are feeding her. So such a great person like Rav Yosef, Lo Yada, the Ika Adofa, did he not understand this, that there is that extra income, and therefore that could be an explanation for our Mishnah. The Kamaisif to Yufta, and he's trying to ask a question from our Mishnah on the discussion that we're having over here regarding a daughter that's being fed by the brothers. In other words, the Gemara considers this answer to be such a simple answer that a person like Rav Yosef, that that tried to prove from our Mishnah regarding the question we had in the case where the brothers are feeding this girl, so there's no raya from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah could very simply be speaking about a case where the brothers are not feeding her, and the Mishnah's chiddush is regarding the extra income that the brothers don't get that. It's such a simple answer. Why would Rav Yosef ask this question from the Mishnah? Ela Amar Rava, so therefore Rava says, Rav Yosef masnisen gufe kashile. When Rav Yosef brought up our Mishnah as a raya to the case when the brothers are feeding her, it's because Rav Yosef had a better raya from our Mishnah. And he had a question on the words of the Mishnah itself, which led him to the conclusion that the brothers do not get the income. Let's see over here. So the Gemara will explain. What was the question he had in our Mishnah? So the Tani, the expression that the language it says in our Mishnah is as follows: Ma'isi yadeh u'mitzi yasa, that both her income and a mitzi, she finds an item, afal pisha legovsa, even if she didn't get it yet, she didn't collect this yet. So then the brothers will inherit this from the father if she got this when the father was still alive. Mm-hmm. So the Gemara's question is the expression that it says here in the Mishnah that she did not collect a mitzvah. What kind of expression is this? Mitziyasa miman gavya. From who do you collect a mitzvah? You don't collect a mitzvah. That's something that you find. The expression of collecting refers to income. She didn't collect her income from her employer yet. But why does the Mishnah bring up over here mitzvah and use this expression of collecting? That was the question Rav Yosef had in our Mishnah. And therefore, what did Rav Yosef prove from our Mishnah? Elalav, what we can learn from our Mishnah is Hachi Kamar. This is what the Mishnah is teaching us. Ma'isi yadeh k'mitziyasa. The Mishnah wants you to understand that we compare her income to this, that the halacha when she finds a mitziyah. Ma mitziyasa, just like the halacha of a mitziyah is, and here there's no doubts about this. This is clear. B'chaye ha'av la'av. Something she finds when the father is alive, so that goes to the father. La'acha misa sa'av, after the father passes away, if she finds any mitziyah la'atzma, she gets to keep it. She is over here for sure. She does not have to give this to the brother. Rashi points out that of this idea that the mitziyah goes to the father is a takanas chachamim, that because the father is feeding her, in return she gives him the mitziyah, and that's only when the father feeds her. But that doesn't apply to the brothers. Regarding the income that we were speaking about before, the income that goes to the father, that's a different story. Over there, that's not specifically to the father. The Gemara had a shaila, maybe that goes to the brothers as well that are feeding her. But regarding the mitzvah, for sure, the brothers don't get this. So when our Mishnah puts ma'isi there, her income, in the same category together with the mitzvah, the reason why the Mishnah is doing this is because the Mishnah wants to teach you af ma'isi yadel nami. The same thing is also with her income. B'chaye av la'av. When the father's alive, the father gets it. La'acha misa za'av la'atzma. After he passes away, her income goes to herself, even if the brothers are feeding her. Shma mina, this is the proof that Rav Yosef brought from our Mishnah. Etmanami, so we learn similar that Amar Rav Yudah Amar Rav said the same halacha. Bastan izanis min ha'achin, a girl that's being fed by the brothers, ma'isi yadeh la'atzma. She keeps her own income. And Amar Rav Kahana said, my time, what's the source for this? We can learn it from the following pasuk. The pasuk says, V'snachaltem oisam lefneichem achreichem. That if the father owns an Eved Kanani, a slave, so then the children inherit this slave. So from this we learn, oisam lefneichem. They, the slaves, the children inherit from the father. But v'loi b'noseichem lebneichem. Do not inherit your daughters will not be inherited by the children, meaning that if the father gets the income from a daughter, so now his children get the income from the daughter. That we do not say. Whatever rights a father has in his daughter to get her financial income or the other things the father gets from his daughter, those rights do not get inherited by the children. So therefore from here we learn out that the children have to feed her. There's a Tanai in the Kesubos, but the income she keeps for herself. Taisus over here actually points out, Taisus' opinion on this sugya is that the Gemara is bringing this pasuk only regarding a ketana. Regarding a naira, it would be obvious that the children do not inherit the schus of the father, because the only reason the father gets his daughter's income when she's already a naira is because the Gemara says that just like a father could sell his daughter, so too ma'isi yadeh goes to the father. Right? So this is b'negeya to, the opposite. B'negeya to a ketana. We learn out from this that he could sell his daughter, so therefore he also gets her income. So brothers could sell their sister, they can't sell their sister. It's obvious regarding a ketana that they would not get this income. Regarding a naira, the fact that the father gets the income has nothing to do with the fact that he can sell her. So therefore I would think that even the sons that can sell her, still they get her income. That's what the Gemara is bringing this pasuk, that you do not inherit the schus that the father has in his daughters.
Rabbi, what if it's just makarkin left over? There's no money. Just makarkin, it goes to the sons.
Okay.
So let's say there's no money to give to the girl. There's only makarki.
So you have to sell it.
You have to sell
Sure,
makarki.
absolutely.
Okay.
Maskeflo Rabba. So Rabba asks the question, how do you know that this is the pshat over here in this pasuk? Ve'eme, maybe I would say, bepitui habas. There's other income that a father gets from his daughter, as we've been learning over here the whole time. Pitui habas, if someone went and seduced this girl, and now there's knas that's owed to the father, or other modes of payment, not necessarily the knas, depends if there's already a dentator or not, akapanim, or knosses, chavalis, other kinds of knosses that the father is owed, the chabalis. Or chabalis, let's say this girl, somebody bruised her, somebody hurt her, and then there's all kinds of payments when you hurt someone. Hakasav medabim. Maybe it's these kinds of payments that a daughter would get, and that payments goes to the father. Those payments, the children do not inherit from the father. But how do you know that this applies to her income, to Maisi Yedeh? Maybe we don't apply this drasha to her income. Rav Chanina learned this way in a brayse. When the Torah is saying that the sons don't inherit this rights that the father had to his daughter, it applies to these details. Only that what we're mentioning here, but not beneged to the income. Okay, so this remains a question. The Gemara doesn't answer this. But the Gemara now addresses what it said here in the brayse, that the father, when a girl got hurt and somebody has to pay her for what he did to her, the father gets this. But the children don't inherit this. But the question is, Chabalois, if she's getting hurt and now the father's the one that gets this, Tzaire de Gufaninu. This is something that she's the one that got the pain in her body, and the father's the one that even gets this Bechlal from his daughter. Where do we see that the father has the rights to get this payment that she got hurt, and that the father would get it? How do we know such a thing? Rav Yosi, what are we talking about over here? Rashi brings over here from the Gemara in Baba Kama. It says there clearly that if a person's sons or daughters got hurt, and someone has to pay them, the father doesn't get it. It says there Yasalem Zgula. Yasalem Zgula means put away the money for them. Open up a bank account. Let's say if somebody hurt your daughter and you sued that person and they made a lot of money for this, put it away in a bank account. But the father does not get that money. So it says over there, Akatana. Rabbi Yosi Bar Chanina says there is a situation where the father is losing from this, that his daughter got hurt. And when is that? Shapotza b'fanel. If this person punched her in the face, for example, and now so this girl is walking around with her face which is completely harmed to them, what happens is the father loses out from this. Right. Because in such a case, the father now can't sell her as a maid, can't marry her off, he's going to lose money off of this. So if the father is losing money from the fact that she got punched in the face, the father gets the payment. That's what we were talking about over here in this brayso when it mentions Chabalis. The Gemara now brings other Amoraim that said the same halacha like we said before. Amar Rav Zayda, the names over here are interesting. Amar Rav Zayda, Amar Rav Masna, Amar Rav. So Rav Zayda in the name of Rav Masna, in the name of Rav. Now V'amrila, another version of this was Amar Rabbi Zayda, Amar Rav Masna, Amar Rav. The only distinction over here is, in the first version it's Rav Zayda, in the second version it's Rabbi Zayda. So Rashi says, what's the difference? When he was in Bavel, so he didn't have smicha yet, so he was called Rav Zayda. But then when he came to Eretz Yisrael, you know the whole story of Rab Zayda, he traveled to Eretz Yisrael, he actually fasted before he went to Eretz Yisrael to forget his Torah, and then he came to Eretz Yisrael, so then he got smicha. Once he got smicha, his name was Rabbi Zayda. They added a yud to his name. This is actually something that's brought in Chassidus, the Rebbe brings it in a Maimer as well, that yud that's added to the name shows actually on bittul. You might think it shows on the fact that he got more knowledge, but the Yud, which is connected to the Chachma of the Eibusha, shows on Bittul. The Yud is the smallest letter, and therefore once he came to Eretz Yisrael, he got elevated to a higher level of Bittul. That's the difference in these two versions here. So what do they say? Bas Hani Zaynis Menachem, exactly like you said before. A girl that's getting fed by the brothers, she keeps her own income. The Chsiv, the Pasuk says, that your children will inherit any slaves, but not the rights to the daughter. The rights that a father has on his daughter, the children do not inherit this. Amalei Avimi Bar Papi. Avimi Bar Papi said to Rav Masna or Rav Zayda that said this in the name of Rav, Shkoid Damra. You're saying it in the name of Rav, but you know who really said the statement? Shkoid said this. Shkoid Manu, who's Shkoid? Says the Gemara, Shmuel. Shmuel had a nickname of Shkoid. As Rashi says, Shkoid means someone that's very diligent on a halacha to make sure that he gets it right. So because he was very diligent in his learning, so therefore he got this nickname. So the Gemara says, Harav Amra. But Rav is the one that said this. Amen. So what he's told him is, Af Shkoid Amra. Rav said this, and Shkoid, which is Shmuel, also said this. Amma Masa, what's the actual halacha regarding this? Amma Ma Bar Meima Ravashi Hachi Amri Nerdoi. Nerdoi said Hilchase Kavasei that Rav Sheshes. We passing like Rav Sheshes all the way in the beginning. The Gemara brought that Rav Sheshes responded to this question, and he said that she does have to give her income to her brothers, and he tried to prove that from a Mishnah that he brought before. Ravashi Amma, however, Ravashi said Hilchase Kavasei the Rav, that we passing like Rav said that she gets to keep her income. And the Hilchasik was say the Rav. This remains a final halacha that she keeps her income. Zok Teilige Mishnah, continuing regarding the rights that a father has in his daughter. Hama'ares is bitay. So this Mishnah is based on the idea that we had so many times that when it comes to marriage, there are two stages: Eidisin and Isuin. And Eidisin, a father does not lose his rights over his daughter. But after Nisuin, if she's fully married, then the father loses his rights over any income that the daughter has. So now, Hama'ares is bitay. A person that married off his daughter, only the first stage of marriage. And the Girsha, she got divorced. And then, following this, Irsa, again he married her off, and Vinis Armala, her husband, passed away. But in both cases, she was never fully married to her husband. So Kesubasa Shalai. So the Tana of this Mishnah, his opinion is that the Kesuba that you get after you get divorced or after the husband dies is even after the first stage of marriage. But who gets that Kesubah? Says the Mishnah, the father gets the Kesubah. Because she was never fully married, the father gets it. He see of the Girsha, if the father fully married her off already, and he see of an Isarmala, but then the husband divorced her, and now he married her off again, and she became an Almana. Ksubasa Shalah, because she was fully married, so in both cases, the first and second marriage, she gets the Ksubah money. Rabbi Yudah says, Hari Shaina Shalav. The first Ksubah that comes from the first marriage, even though she was fully married, the father gets the Ksubah. But only the second one. After the second marriage, then she gets the Ksubah. And the Gemara will explain everything. We'll see. Amrulai. So Chachamim said back to Rabbi Yehuda, why are you saying that the father still gets the Ksubah from the first marriage after she was fully married? Once she's fully married, the father has no rights over any Ksubah here. So the father should not get not the first Ksubah and not the second Ksubah. Let's see. The Gemara will explain this machlokes. Let's see. The Gemara will explain. But the Gemara starts off with an interesting point there regarding what it said in the Mishnah. We're talking over here about this girl that got married twice. Once the Mishnah said, and the husband divorced her. The second time the Mishnah says that the husband died. So the Gemara says, Taime de Isia v'girsha. The Mishnah here is speaking about a case that once she got married and she was divorced, and then Isia v'nisarmala. The second time the husband died. Avol nisarmala trei zimni. But if what happened was she was married and two of her husbands passed away, su lechazia leinsuvi. She will not be able to get married to a third husband after this, because the fact that two of her husbands passed away shows that she causes this to happen. So she can't. She's the cause, so she can't get married again. Va'agav urchei kasasim lantana. So along his way, even though this is not the main theme of our Mishnah, but by the Mishnah choosing this case here, that once she got divorced and once she got her husband died, so it's telling us Rebbe, like the opinion of Rebbe, the Amar Rebbe says, "Betrei zimni hava chazake." By this happening to her twice, that's enough to establish a status that this woman causes her husbands to pass away, so she can't get married again. Yeah, but it's interesting because our Mishnah only talks about, the Gemara that is talks about what happens if two of her husbands died, and the Gemara questions why did our Mishnah not want to say that the case is that two of her husbands died. Question though is, what would be the reverse? Why would the Mishnah not say a case if two of her husbands divorced her? Could she then get remarried? That the Mishnah does not say. And it's actually a discussion in the Rishonim. The Gemara doesn't bring this up. Some say that it's the same like two husbands that died. That after two husbands divorcing her, she should not get married a third time. But the Psak Halacha actually is that we don't compare a money if the husband died, two husbands divorcing her, she still could get married the third time. And anyways, we don't paskin like Rabbi regarding this thing over here. I don't think so.
It's called katlanit.
Yes, Anisha katlanit, exactly. A woman. Yeah, we learned about this in the Gemara in Yavamis. If you remember, the Gemara in Yavamis gives two pshatim. Either the reason is because it's her bad luck, Mazala Garam, or the Gemara says Mayana Garam, which means that only if she's already fully married, then you have this halacha over here. Taisus brings it up here. Okay, so let's see. Now the Gemara will explain the basis of Rabbi Yuda's opinion. Zakta Gemara, Rabbi Yuda Harishayna Shalav. Rabbi Yuda says if she was fully married twice, but then the first husband divorced her, the second husband passed away, so the ksubah of the first husband, Rabbi Yuda says, still goes to the father. The ksubah of the second husband will go to her. Zakta Gemara, my time with Rabbi Yehuda. What's the basis of Rabbi Yuda's opinion? Why should the ksubah of the first husband go to the father? Rabba and Rav Yosef Damri Tarvayu, so Rabba and Rav Yosef both explain, Hoyel or Mishas, Eidisin, Zacha Behen Av. When, from what moment is the obligation of the Ksuba begin? From the time of the Eidisin. So because that's the time when the husband becomes obligated to pay the Ksuba, so therefore at that point of time, she's still in the possession of the father. So even though the actual payment of the Ksuba only comes later after he was fully married to her and he passed away or divorced her, but the rights for this payment of the Ksuba, the obligation starts from the time of Eidisin. So therefore the first Ksuba for the first husband goes to the father still. Only the second Ksuba goes to her herself. After she was already fully married to the first husband, she's out of the father's possession. Eidisin is the first stage of marriage. Masev Rave, so Rave asks on this. Rabbi Yehuda says, in the Braisa we have Rabbi Yehuda says as follows: Harishayne Shalav. So Rabbi Yehuda says that the first ksuba goes to the father, as we learned in the Mishnah. But then the Braisa adds, Umayde Rabbi Yehuda. However, Rabbi Yehuda will admit that if a person marries off his daughter just the first stage of marriage, kashi katana, so the father has the rights to marry her off when she's a katana. But then ubagra, between the Eidisin and the Nesuin, she became a begettes. She was already 12 and a half years old. And only after this she got married. Then I say, She'en Lavir Shus Basa. At this point, when she's a begettes, the father has no rights over her, and therefore, who's going to get the ksuba? She's going to get the ksuba because at this point she's a begettes. But the question is, Frekta Gemara, Amai, why if at the time of the Nisuin, at the full marriage, at that point she's a begettes, why does she get it? Based on the logic we said before, we should apply here as well and say, if at the time of the Eidisin she was still a katana and she was still in the possession of the father should still get the ksuba. What does it matter that between the Eidisin and the Nisun she became a begettes and therefore now she's in her own possession? But don't we go after the time of the Eidisin? That's what we just said. So therefore the Gemara answers, you have to explain the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda a bit differently. It has to be explained as follows. So that Rabba and Rav Yosef Damri Tarvayu, what Rabba and Rav Yosef both explained is, when the Kesubos is written, not from the time of Eidisin. The time when Chachamim instituted that the obligation to pay the Kesubos begins, that actually begins from the time of Eidisin. But usually you don't write the Kesubos at the time of Eidisin. When's the Kesubos written? Before the Chuppah, by the time of the Nisun, like we do it today. I mean, today we actually have the Eidisin and the Nisun at the same time. But even in those times when it was separate, the time the Kesubos was written was right before the Chuppah. So therefore, when you write the Kesubos, in whose possession was she at that time? She was still in the father's possession. It's still before the Nisuin. It may be long after the Eidisin, but it's still before the Nisuin. So she's in her father's possession. Migbe Gabia, Migbe Gabia is already a separate thing. But so the point of here that the Gemara is saying is that this explains why, if she became a begettes before the Nisuin, she will get the Kesubos. Because we go after the time that the Kesubos is written. So if she's already a begettes at that time, so she gets the Kesubos. But if she did not become a begettes and her husband passed away, so at the time when the Kesubos was written, she was still in the father's possession. So the father gets the Kesubos from the first marriage. Okay, so that explains the Mishnah and the case when she became a begettes. But now the Gemara asks another question, which according to Rashi is really a general question regarding the Kesubos, every Kesubos. Umigbe me'emas gavia. When it comes to collecting a Kesubos, with what date do we look at the date of the collection? We go back to what date as considered to be when the obligation of this Kesubos that the husband owes her, from what date does it begin? So as we'll see here in the Gemara, and Rashi explains, what is this relevant for? This is relevant for what properties does she have a right to collect from her husband. Anytime the husband has an obligation to pay her a Kesubos, there's a shibud, there's a lien that goes on all of his properties. But that lien only goes on the properties that he has in his possession at the time when the obligation he has to pay his wife the Kesubos begins. Right? So the question is, at what time, what date do we say that this obligation the husband had to pay his wife the Kesubos begins? Do we go from the time of the Eidisin, which is actually the time that Chachamim said that from then the obligation to pay the Kesubos begins? Or do we say that it goes from the time when the Kesubos is actually written? And therefore, any properties that the father sold before the time the Kesubos was written, she won't be able to go to the buyer of that property and say, give it back to me. Because the lien begins afterwards, only when the Kesubos is written. The wife, she wants to go collect her Kesubos from a buyer. She wants to collect the ksuba from a buyer, who bought it from the husband. Correct.
He did.
Oh, okay.
It's a property like he did that he already sold.
Whatever kind of properties. So let's see. So Gemara here says, so again, the question is, from what point of time is the shibud on these properties begin? From the time of the Edison or from the time when the ksuba is written? Amar Ravuna says, Maneh Masayim, the basic amount that every husband is obligated to give his wife, whether it's a maneh, in the case of an almaneh, or a masayim, you have to give two, when it's a basula, min ha'edison. That rights of the ksuba, the date when she could collect from it begins from the time of edison, which is the time Chachamim instituted that you're obligated to give it. Tosefes, but then any additional amount that a husband wants to give in a ksuba, a husband can add to a ksuba whatever he wants. So any additional amount that a husband wants to add, min hanisuin, that the husband is obligating himself when? Not from the time of Edison, from the time that he actually wrote the ksuba. That's when he's adding that amount. So therefore we say that amount she could only collect from the date of the nisuin, from when it was written, right before the nisuin. Ravasi says it doesn't matter. Echad zeh ve'echad zeh, both the basic amount that Chachamim instituted that she gets, and also the amount that the husband added, min nisuin. She could only collect from that date from the nisuin. And then the lien of the property on the properties does not begin before, from the time of Edison. And Rashi explains the reason is because Ravasi says, even though Chachamim instituted that the husband should be obligated from the time of the Edison, but the fact that she did not force him to write a ksuba right then and there at the Edison, she waits for the ksuba to be written till before the nisuin, so she's meichelet. She says, I'm going to begin the loan of this ksuba, so to speak. The owing of the ksuba will start from when the ksuba will be written. So therefore, it's only from then that she could collect the ksuba.
So there's gerushin between Yerushin and Nisuin. She doesn't get nothing?
She does. No, it doesn't mean that she was meichel the ksuba altogether. But the lien on the properties that would allow her to collect from a lekeach, from someone that bought the properties, she's meichel that the date should begin from the later time, only from when the ksuba was written. But the Gemara asks on this, the distinction that Rav Huna said, right? Rav Huna made a distinction between the basic ksuba and the additions that a husband added. Did Rav Huna make such a distinction? But for Itmar, we learned as follows. What happens if I see all of shtei ksubas? A wife comes and she has two ksubas, and she shows her husband, look, you wrote me two ksubas. Achas shel Masayim. One ksuba says you owe me the regular amount in a ksuba 200, and v'achas shel shleish meis. And then there's another ksuba that you added another 100, that you owe me 300. And the case over here, as Rashi explains, is there are two dates on these ksubas. First, the husband wrote her on an earlier date, he wrote her 200, and then at a later date, he decided to add more, and he wrote her a ksuba of 300. So now, which ksuba could she collect with? But Rav Huna said about this. So the husband says to her as follows: Basal ligbais masayim. If she's coming to collect with the one that has in it 200 with the earlier date gaive, she can use that ksuba. But gaive is man rishon. She's going to have to collect only with the rights that she has from that earlier date, or actually, even with the rights of that earlier date, meaning that the lien on the properties is going to begin even earlier with that earlier date. Shleish meis, if she wants to collect 300, so then goivim is man sheni. So then she's going to have to go with the later date from the second ksuba. But she can't collect from both. But now the Gemara asks, if what Rav Huna said before is true, that we divide the dates of a ksuba, we divide the basic amount that he owes her, and we divide the tosfos, the additional amount that the husband gives her. If that's true, so let us say over here, when she has these two ksubas, tigbi masayim is mandishin, let her collect the basic ksuba from the first date that she has written on that ksuba, and then umeya, when it comes to any additional amount, which is what happened here, the additional 100 that the husband is giving her, mizman sheni. That additional amount, let her collect it from the second time that the husband wrote in the second ksuba. When it comes to the additional amount, that Rav Huna said she could only collect from whatever final date that the husband wrote, or over here, this is the date that the husband gave her this additional amount. So why don't we split this? So the Gemara says, what are you basically saying here? You're basically saying when she takes out two ksubas, she should be able to use both of these ksubas to collect with? If so, go a step further. Well, the taimech, according to your thinking, tigmi chamish meis, let her collect all 500. Kulam, everything. Masayim is man rishon, let her collect 200 from the first ksubah, and then tlasmeim is man sheni, let her collect the 300 from the second ksubah. If you're accepting both of these ksubahs and you're not viewing it in a way that the husband sort of retracted the first ksubah and he's only giving her the second, so let her collect all 500. Ella, the answer to that question is, why can't you collect fully both ksubahs? Chomesh meis my time gavi, she doesn't collect all 500. Kivin, because the husband did not mean to add another ksuba, that she could use both. Kivin the leikosov law, the husband did not write in the second ksuba, tzivisi, I wanted, va'isifis lach, and I added to you tlasmeya amasayim, another 300 in addition to the 200. Anytime a husband adds additional money to the ksuba, this is the language that's usually written. I decided and I added more. He didn't write that. So when he gave her a second ksuba, what did he mean to do by this? He didn't mean to add that you collect all 500. What he meant to say to her is as follows. If you're going to collect from the first ksuba, so gavia masayim, you want to use the first date because you want to be able to collect properties even from the first date, so then you'll get 200. But if you're going to forgo that and you're only going to collect from the date based on the date of the second ksuba, so gavia tlasme, you'll get extra 300 or extra 100, that is, but you'll only use the date of the second ksuba. So he was giving her sort of an option. So hachanami, so that answers our question why we don't say according to Rav Huna that he gets 200 based on the first date and 100 based on the second date. The reason why she doesn't collect that extra 100 from the later date, he did not add and say that I'm adding you a one more 100 over the 200 that I gave you in the first ksuba. So therefore she was meichel, that is, the shibud of the first date. If she's going to be using the second ksuba, she's taking the date of the second ksuba.